Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2022 historical fiction epic, The Northman. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Shine for yet again requesting another review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Northman is directed by Robert Eggers, and Robert Eggers, for me personally, is a director that I'm not as enamored with as others are. Like, other people think he's like one of the best directors working today. Anything that he touches turns to gold. They look forward to any project that he has coming out or he's even remotely a part of. And I'm not in that boat. I saw The Witch. I did not like it. I thought it was disappointing, to say the least. And I never really got around to seeing The Lighthouse because it just looks like a weird movie, but a weird film that's also very pretentious. That's not something I'm really into. And The Northman, I was more curious about this one than any of his other previous projects because of the fact that it reminded me of something like Conan the Barbarian or some of these other fantasy films that I'm a fan of, like sword and sorcery movies. And the trailer dropped and the visuals looked good, but the story honestly seemed like it was too similar to Conan in a way where it was just art house Conan. And so I was just like, I don't know about that. I think I'll pass. And after finally seeing the movie, it's better than I thought it was going to be, but it's still not one of my personal favorites. And I'll get to why I feel that way soon enough. But it has nothing to do with Robert Eggers' direction. I thought he did an incredible job with this movie. I think this is his best direction to date as a filmmaker. I genuinely feel that way. There are some just unbelievably epic shots in this film in terms of the spectacle and the size and scope of it. The usage of camera angles, the different pans, the zooms, the way that he uses the camera to really just create a certain mood and atmosphere or to put you in the middle of a battle. And it's a really visceral, haunting film. And the visuals and the direction really do tie into that. And it really connects with the movie in a way that just makes it so much more mystical and mythical and honestly magnificent from a visual perspective. And I think he just did a great job bringing this world to life. And there's just a lot of scenes in this film that are just very visually striking and astounding. And so I would say for my book, so to speak, this is the kind of direction that wows me. What he did in The Witch, nah, kind of dime a dozen when it comes to those indie horror films from A24. From what I've seen from The Lighthouse in terms of the clips, it didn't really wow me that much. Here, though, I mean, there's some shots in this that'll make your jaw drop because of the way that he shoots these scenes. The screenplay by Shijon and Robert Eggers. I probably butchered the guy's name. The script, here's my issue with this screenplay. It's not necessarily a bad thing to be a simple revenge story. But if you're going to be a simple revenge story in this genre, then you have to at least put enough of a unique spin on things to make your story feel fresh. And I never really felt that was the case with this story. It did. It felt like it was Conan the Barbarian mixed in with some other elements of some other fantasy stories and fantasy films that have already been done before. So it did come across as kind of rote and kind of been there, done that at times. And the fact that it just stretched things out too much and it had this kind of self-importance about it that it didn't necessarily earn when it comes to certain aspects of the plot. It just made it kind of a slog to sit through at times, especially in the middle. Like, this film really sags in the middle. But despite that, there are some moments that really work, that I think are genuinely great. I think, and I want to see the more fantastical, the more fantasy elements of this movie work better than the more grounded, realistic elements to me. Like the visions of the Valkyrie, or the sequence involving the Seeress, played by Björk, and so on and so forth. Stuff like that, or just the moments where it's just insane, like the battle inside of a volcano, the big climactic sword fight uh, at the pits of hell, like stuff like that really makes this film stand out, and this script stand out in a good way. But on the flip side, there's other things that make this script stand out in a bad way. Like the first 15, 20 minutes or so that are just so painfully ridiculous. Like, I don't care if it actually was a part of the tradition with the Vikings or the Berserkers or anything, or it's historically accurate. None of that matters to me, because this is just silly. When you have grown men howling and grunting, or in one scene with Ethan Hawke and this other kid who's playing the young version of, well, I wouldn't say young version, but it's playing young Amleth. Um, and there's a scene with them and Willem Dafoe, and the the kid and his father are on all fours. They're on their hands and knees, and they're crawling around, and they're growling, and they're burping, and they're farting. That is just silly. It's silliness. Like it just takes you out of the film. You're like, what the fuck, really? Ethan Hawke is burping, and then the kid farts. Like it's like, what? And then there's other scenes with Amleth and his barbarians where they're standing around a campfire and they're acting like they're turning into beasts, and they're all like, "Arr, arr, arr." It's just silly. It's silliness. And I know some people say, well, that's how it was. I don't care. It doesn't translate well on screen. It comes across like a comedy. But once you get past stuff like that, and it starts to focus on Amleth trying to get revenge on the death of his father, who was killed by his uncle Fjolnir, and he decides to come up with this plan to act like he's a slave and get on the slave ship and head over to Fjolnir's camp, and then take him out and conquer his fate. That's when the script gets somewhat compelling, despite it being derivative, because it's a simple but it's an effective plot element. It's revenge. It's like, I will get revenge for my father. I will get revenge for my mother. I will save my mother. I will kill this guy. Like, it's simple, but it's effective. It works. And I don't mind the relationship that forms between Amleth and Olga, the sorceress. I think those two are a good pair. The story is arguably at its most compelling when it's focusing on those two, especially when there are stakes. When Amleth finds out that she's with child, actually, she has two children that are in her womb. Like she's gonna have twins, and so that really adds to the stakes, and it makes his choice at the end to leave that life behind, that path that he could potentially take to be with her, to raise his kids in another kingdom, so much more tragic, because he lets her go because he realizes that, I could go and do this, but if I don't kill this bloodline of Fjolnir, if I don't take out Fjolnir and his bloodline, they're going to hunt me. And they're going to hunt you, and they're going to hunt my children and my children's children for the rest of time. And the only way for you and my children to be safe is for me to do this, to finish my quest. And speaking of the quest, like there's some other stuff that I thought was pretty cool, like the whole search for the sword. He needs to find this certain kind of sword that's fated for him to use in order to defeat Fjolnir, and it's something called the Nightblade. And he has to go and find the location of this sword and fight this it seems like it's some kind of specter or like a reanimated corpse. So he's got to fight this thing and then take the sword. And one really cool thing about the sword and something very unique about it is that it only works at night. So it really is a night blade. Like at night, it's like the best sword ever. Like it's you can't break it. It's really easy to wield, and it's just an absolute killing machine. But during the day, it's too heavy to even pull out of the. It's I'm trying to the sheath. Like you can't even pull it out of the sheath. You can't even do anything with it. It's essentially useless. The only thing you could use it for is maybe as a blunt force object, and that's it. I like that idea. I think that adds a different, unique kind of twist on things in terms of, oh, it's not just some other, sword that his father and his grandfather and his they built, and it's just a regular sword. There's something a little bit more magical to it. And I like the whole stuff involving Amleth befriending people at the farm and getting to know people more, and in scenes like him saving his younger brother from being killed by this guy during this brutal game, which is really what it is. It's kind of like it's not really football. It's kind of like soccer, but without using your feet. Like you have to grab this ball and you have to throw it in between these two posts. So it's kind of similar to that. Like you're on a field and there's one team and there's another team and they're trying to stop you from scoring, but there's no rules. So you could just be no holds barred with it and just beat the shit out of people. It kind of reminds me of the football scene in Lock Up with Sylvester Stallone at the prison yard. That's the kind of vibe that I got from that scene, and I like that. I like seeing that was something a little different too, having this kind of sport game, and then Amleth saving the kid, and that enabling him to kind of ingratiate himself into the inner circle, so to speak, of this farm. And once things get crazy, when he starts using the night blade and is killing people and, cutting up corpses and putting them up on the roofs and freaking everybody out and making people at the farm think like this is some kind of vengeful spirit from beyond the grave. And that's really where the film picks up the pace for sure. And it then escalates into just more just visceral violent insanity, like the scene where Olga essentially poisons people with her stew that has all these mushrooms in it, and now everybody's like tripping balls. They're just tripping, and Amleth is here with his night blade just taking people out. uh Guts one guy. There's another scene where he takes out this one guy who tried to kill him earlier when he was a kid, and he slashed him in the face and cut off his nose, and the guy survived, but didn't survive this time around because he gets a sword right through the center of his face. So his nose is cut off, and then Amleth just takes the sword and just shoves it right there, right in between, uh, right between the eyes, basically, because it's right here, almost. But yeah, just shoves it right in the center of his face, and it's just a brutal kill. And eventually, things kind of they culminate the way you think it's going to. It's fated for Amleth to fight Fjolnir at the gates of hell, and Amleth, after he decides he's going to leave his wife and his two unborn kids behind to get revenge in order to save them, he he goes in and confronts the remaining people that are still there at the farm, takes them out, kills his mom because earlier his mom revealed that she actually likes being with Fjolnir. So that Fjolnir is a better husband to her than her previous husband was, than his father was, because his father took her as a slave and took advantage of her. She didn't even want Amleth. And like that was a different twist I didn't necessarily see coming, that the mother actually did not want to be saved. And then it goes as far as her trying to manipulate Amleth and tries to put the moves on him, which is just really disturbing and unsettling. But it makes for a genuinely compelling aspect of the script, I have to be honest, despite it being so messed up. And just think about it. Think about it from Amleth's perspective. Like his whole world is turned upside down now. And at the point when he's confronting his mother and his younger brother, who he saved earlier from this brute who tried to kill him during this game, he now has to kill them both because they're trying to kill him, trying to stop him from finishing his quest and getting his revenge. So just think about it from his perspective. He has to slay his own mother and his younger brother all in one night, and then he has to go in and fight his uncle to the death. Like it's like it's pretty messed up. Um, so yeah, he kills his mom in self-defense and his younger brother, and that leads to the climactic battle inside the volcano, the pits of hell. And it's pretty epic. It's pretty awesome. It looks like Amleth is screwed. He doesn't have a chance. He's been cut up by Fjolnir. He's bleeding. He was already in bad shape even before he even got to the volcano, and now he's even worse shape. And he still finds a way to get the upper hand and decapitates Fjolnir. And it's a very satisfying scene. Like it definitely satisfies the character's bloodlust as well as the audiences when it comes to the film's story. Like it's not one of those things where it's a letdown in terms of how Fjolnir gets defeated. Like not even in the slightest. And the film ends rather simply with Amleth. His quest is done. He dies, and he is now on to Valhalla. And before he dies, he sees a vision of Olga and sees that she's safe, and so are his sons. And so his bloodline will live on, and now he can head to Valhalla in peace. So yeah, it's not something that I would say is a story that you haven't seen before. And I think that's why the moments where it stretches things out become particularly tedious, because you're like, I know where this is going. I know what's happening here. There's a few little twists and kind of surprises in terms of how he finds out where the location of the sword is. That was a pretty trippy scene with this seer and the desiccated corpse of his, I don't know if he would call him a friend, but desiccated corpse of this jester who was a companion of his father's. And I guess I would say he was a friend, especially when he was younger, when he was a boy. So this desiccated corpse of this guy, and the guy speaks from beyond the grave, the jester, and lets him know what he needs to do next. That that gave me like Hellboy vibes, and I really like Hellboy 1 and 2, so that was kind of fun. And yeah, that's like where this film is at its best, when it's having fun, when it's playing around with conventions, when it's embracing the absurdity and just the weirdness of it. That's when the film is kind of at its best. Other than the burping and the farting and the growling, that's not it. And I think it would have helped either to correct myself. Sorry, I don't know why I said that particular way. I think it would have helped if the script had a few more moments of action that really got the blood pumping, because what you get early on when it comes to the attack on one of the villages, the scene with the berserkers or the Vikings or whoever they are, the barbarians, whoever they are, I don't know. I'm not a historian, but this roaming band of marauders, they show up a lot, and Amleth is a part of it, and they attack this village. The way that things were shot wasn't the problem. It's what was in the script that was just not really as visceral, not as intense, and not as thrilling as it could be. Because you never really felt like anyone that was being attacked in terms of this army by the Marauders was a threat. It all seemed like people that were like really short, stocky, maybe kind of pudgy, or just didn't really seem like they were a threat to Amleth or any of his fellow marauders. And so what happened is it just felt like it wasn't a fair match or a fair fight. And it wasn't like there was a scene where Amleth fights this big guy or something. Like there was nothing like that. Like this big ripped, built like a brick shit house, member of the village who's like the protector or something and just gets in a brawl with him. Like there was nothing like that. So it was just kind of a sequence that just fell a little flat. And then it's kind of the same thing when it comes to some of the other scenes of action in the movie, other than the final battle inside of the volcano. A lot of the scenes, they're done in secrecy, or they're done off screen, or it's more of an artistic choice in terms of the sword fighting or the actions. And then it just doesn't really have that adrenaline rush, and that doesn't really have those moments where it kicks in terms of like the intensity or the sheer visceralness of these sword fights and these battles. So I really think that is something that was honestly a bit lacking when it comes to the script. And I know the argument might be, well, it's not an action film. I know that. And technically there are a lot of moments in Conan the Barbarian where there isn't a lot of action either. But when the action is there, when you get like the final climactic battle, for instance, like that is epic. It's really exciting and it's thrilling. But you don't really get those thrills other than the sword fight in the volcano. So I feel could have had a little bit more of the stuff you see inside the volcano, but without the volcano when it comes to some of the other uh, scenes of potential action. And like I said, embrace the fantasy elements even more. Like it's clearly inspired by Norse mythology. So just go all out with that. Like we don't need to be trying to make a gritty, realistic film in this vein. Like I don't really think it serves that much of a purpose, and it really holds the story back because it limits what it can do in terms of uh, action scenes or in terms of other aspects of the story. The cast I thought was pretty good for the most part. Alexander Skarsgård, he's kind of just there for me. Like physically, he's definitely got a presence. The guy is jacked. He's tall. He definitely, it seems like an intimidating presence, but he has not really any charisma whatsoever. Like there's no charisma here. He hasn't really gotten any better since his days as Tarzan. Like I don't really think he's that charismatic of an actor. And the same thing applies here. Like he's just there. Like physically, he's stout. When it comes to other aspects of the character or the performance, not so much. Like I never really learned to love Amleth. I'm never like, yeah, I'm like not I was never really fully in his corner at any point in the movie because I never really learned to love Skarsgård in the title role as the character. It was just one of those things where I was like, he's okay, but it was never one of those like, yeah, I love this character. I want to see him succeed. I want to see him get his revenge. I want to see him kick a lot of ass. Like you never really got that. That's at least not to me personally. Nicole Kidman, I thought she was great. I mean, she was such a snake in this, but she did a really good job playing such a slimy character. And Claes Bang as Fjolnir, uh, man, like I felt he was even more charismatic, and he was just so much more memorable to me than Alexander Skarsgård as Amleth. Honestly, he did such a good job. You could have swapped the two actors. Might have been a little bit better because I really felt like he had more of a screen presence, and you could tell that he enjoyed playing the bad guy. So maybe you would have lost something though, because then Fjolnir wouldn't have been such a fun villain to watch if the roles were swapped. But yeah, Claes Bang, he really does help the movie. It really does help the cast immensely. And so does Anya Taylor-Joy. Like, Anya Taylor-Joy was terrific, as always. Just mesmerizing in this role as the sorceress. And I loved her intensity. I loved her vulnerability as well. And I loved how she wasn't also afraid to show a little sex appeal. Like, Anya Taylor-Joy is one of my favorite up and coming actresses. And she was just awesome in this. Like she's in pretty much everything that I've seen her in. Ethan Hawke, he was fine as King Arvindul, but I mean, what can you say? Like he wasn't in the film for a lot, and in one scene, he's literally acting like a dog and burping. Like it's not what I would consider to be one of his finest hours as an actor. Willem Dafoe as Hamir the Fool. It's perfect casting. Like he plays the fool really well. And Björk as the seeress, I was surprised by how good she was. She wasn't in it a lot, but she really did nail that role. And so did like the costume designer for her look and the makeup and everything, and just the direction, just everything involving the seeress. I thought was spectacular. And Bjork's a big reason for that because she's just such a effortlessly ethereal and just surreal presence as it is. She didn't really have to do that much acting when it comes to playing that role. The film also features some good cinematography by Yaron Blaschke. Actually, good is an understatement. The cinematography here is epic. It's excellent. There are just so many scenes in this that just pop visually. The editing by Louis Ford. I think at times it's a bit too messy. It can kind of take you out of a scene, but at other times it makes a scene more epic. It adds more to the mood and atmosphere. So overall, I think it's a pretty well edited film. The music by Robin Carolyn and Sebastian Gainsborough, it was okay. A lot of it's very much trying to be realistic in terms of the kind of music and the kind of songs and ballads that you would hear from this time period. And while that does add a certain authenticity to the film, it doesn't really make the music that memorable to me. I mean, if you compare this score to something like Basil Polidoris' score in Conan the Barbarian, like it's no contest. Like you don't really get that kind of epic feel with the score here. It's just kind of there. And the movie's like 136 minutes, and yeah, it does drag at times. I think you could have cut out like 20 to 30 minutes easily, and you probably wouldn't have missed that much. Um, but it's a film that definitely does show the budget. I mean, 90 million dollars, because that's how much it costs, like approximately 70 to 90 million. That's not necessarily a ton of money for a modern movie, but for Robert Eggers, that's probably like the most money he's ever worked with in his career to date, and he definitely did showcase that, especially when it comes to the locations that he picked for the film, the visual effects. Like, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of CGI when it comes to the volcano scene, but it was really well done, and it was uh, uh, some of the better green screen work that I've seen when it comes to this kind of epic movie. And the budget's definitely on the screen. Like, it's utilized very well. And overall, yeah, I liked the film. I don't love it though. I don't think it's a 5-star film. I think that's way too high of a rating for this movie. I don't think it's a masterpiece. There are other films like this that I prefer a lot more, but it's a film that I still liked enough when it comes to the visuals, when it comes to some of the brutality and the visceralness of it, and for some of the spectacle, like the final fight in the volcano. Like, that was honestly one of my favorite scenes that I've seen in a film like this in a long time. So yeah, if you like these kind of movies, I would definitely recommend it. But keep in mind, it is kind of art house Conan. But if that's something that's up your alley, give it a watch sometime. But anyway, that's my review of The Northman. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.